Good evening. Reagan, that was too much. I had kept it together. I'm excited emotionally, as you might imagine. And Reagan just ruined all my hard work at collecting myself. About a year ago, a little less than a year ago, I woke up to my wife jumping up and down on top of my chest. You're preaching at family camp, you're preaching at family camp, which I was very, very excited. Maybe in that moment I didn't show the excitement that I felt, but this has been a long time coming for me, because from that moment, I've been praying, I've been dreaming, I've been having nightmares, I've been walking down the street in Uganda and thinking about this moment. And I think that one of the reasons it's so important to me is because this place right here represents a dying space in our culture, a place of community. One by one, they're being taken away, but not this one. When Reagan stands up and speaks like that, I'm born and raised in this camp too. We must protect this. There's been a lot of excitement, and a lot of people have come to me with, I'm so excited. It feels unique this year. I think that some of that might just be that I'm not used to being the speaker, so maybe the speaker always gets some of that. But I want to say there's been a lot of work that I've seen that's gone into all of this. I especially want to thank Amy Ludke for the work that she has done and is continuing to do throughout the week to lead an effort in prayer. And I want to cause her a big problem. This morning, there were 12 of us that went into the prayer chapel, and we prayed at 8:30 a.m., and half an hour after most of us go to work anyway. And she was thrilled because we filled the room up. And I told her, I said, I think that's going to continue to grow. What are we going to do if we outgrow this space? So she came to me a little while later, and she had rearranged the chairs, and she said, look, now I've got room for 18. So if 7 of you could join us tomorrow morning, I want to see what she does. Can we respond? The excitement that we have, the anticipation that we have for what might happen this week, can we respond to that by praying for that anticipation? Just wanting something to happen in your life doesn't make it happen, but prayer can do something. Let's meet together and cause Amy a problem. Let's cause her to have to find one venue after another until this is how we're praying at 8:30 in the morning, okay? As most of you know, my family lives in Uganda. And there are some crazy stories that come out of our life. You've heard some of them if any of you have read newsletters or videos or Facebook. But there's one that I haven't told anyone before, just my wife. I have a good friend in Uganda his name's Tim. He's from New Zealand, and he's a big, muscular guy. Grew up playing rugby, so you can see why we have so much in common. And he likes to go running, and he does this for mostly the purpose of psychological health, I think. He likes to be fit, but in the city of Kampala, it's very difficult to find places to run. I would have no idea because I don't run. My wife knows how hard it is, and she likes running with all the people and cars and traffic. But Tim's goal is to run out into the middle of nowhere. And he ran out into a neighborhood nearby us called Bukasa, which gets down near the water. And he got out to an area where there were not a lot of people out there. And along the road, there's a ditch. And he could see far down the road something in the ditch, and he started to hear what sounded like a young child crying for their mother. And as he got closer, he noticed that this was not a young child, this was a grown man who was so injured that his cries for help sounded like a little boy crying out for his mother. He'd been riding a motorcycle, and he'd fallen off the road into the ditch, and the motorcycle had landed on his leg, and who knows how long he'd been laying there. Now that's a unique story, but sometimes this stuff happens. And Tim was trying to decide what to do. It might seem like the obvious thing to do is to help this man, and the steps are easy. I just want to complicate it a little bit for you by asking you to trust me that those kinds of situations are not so simple in Uganda. There are things that could happen if you don't handle it the right way. Even so far as Tim might be blamed for pushing the man in, could be sued. Tim might be, okay, I don't want to go into all that, but he had an issue in his mind he needed to figure out in that moment. What's the right way for me to handle this situation? So he's telling me about this. And I said, Tim, do you remember what you preached 2 days ago? This jog happened on Tuesday. 2 days earlier, he had just preached on the Good Samaritan. So he and I started talking about faith. Because for me, that caused a problem. Faith didn't seem so clear. I started looking at faith. I looked at James. Faith and works. How many of us know this? James 2:25. I'll just read it to you. In the same way, was not even Rahab the prostitute considered righteous for what she did when she gave lodging to the spies and sent them off in a different direction? Did James do that on purpose? Is he going out? I'll just preach from right here all night. Doesn't that seem bizarre to you? James goes on in chapter 2 talking about faith and works, faith and works, faith and works, examining the relationship between the two. And he gives us, from the entire Old Testament narrative, 2 examples. Abraham, I think we'd all agree, good example of faith, and Rahab. Rahab, and I started looking at this thinking, now wait a minute. How does Rahab become one of our top 2? So I went to Hebrews. By faith, the prostitute Rahab, because she welcomed the spies, was not killed with those who were disobedient. Do you know where that's found in Hebrews? Chapter 11, verse 31. She is the grand finale of the list of heroes of the faith. She follows Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, and the people of Israel. And then Rahab. Do you know who barely gets a mention? David. This, for me, really caused my wheels to start spinning. So I went back and I looked at the story of Rahab. And I'm just going to read to you some of it. You can turn there if you'd like to. It's in Joshua 2, 1 through 24. I'm not going to read that entire section, but that's where the story is. Then Joshua, son of Nun, secretly sent 2 spies. Go look over the land, he said, especially Jericho. So they went and entered the house of a prostitute named Rahab, and they stayed there. The king of Jericho was told, look, some of the Israelites have come here tonight to spy out the land, which, by the way, these are not very good spies. We're in the 2nd verse, and they've already been caught. So the king of Jericho sent this message to Rahab, bring out the men who came to you and entered your house, because they've come to spy out the whole land. But the woman had taken the 2 men and hidden them. She said, yes, the men came to me, but I did not know where they had come from. At dusk, when it was time to close the city gate, they left. I don't know which way they went. Go after them quickly, you might catch up with them. But she had taken them up to the roof and hidden them under the stalks of flax that she'd laid out on the roof. So the men set out in pursuit of the spies on the road that leads to the fords of the Jordan, and as soon as the pursuers had gone out, the gate was shut. Before the spies lay down for the night, she went up on the roof and she said to them, I know that the Lord has given you this land, and that great fear of you has fallen on us, so that all who live in this country are melting in fear because of you. We've heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea. For when you came out of Egypt and what you did in Sihon and Og, the two kings of the Amorites east of the Jordan, whom you completely destroyed, when we heard of it, our hearts melted in fear, and everyone's courage failed because of you. For the Lord your God is God in heaven above and on earth below. Now there's more to the story, but that's what I really focused on. This is her action. How did that place her in the hall of faith? Thomas Oden outlines 3 principal acts of faith. These are taken from Augustine, who said it's knowing, feeling, and willing, and I'll be working with those 3 concepts. Thomas Oden describes knowing as the assent of the mind. Assent means an agreement of the mind. Feeling, Oden describes this as trust of the heart, and feeling, decision of the will. I want to walk through this and talk about faith for a couple of reasons. One, I think that there are many of us who have been in the church for a long time and we've figured out how to fit in and look right, and we're not completely sure what faith even is. So you can fly under the cover and pretend like I'm not talking to you and learn in secret tonight, but I'm talking to you. For those of you who have come this evening and you're not familiar with Christianity, I want to talk to you as well. And I want to talk a little bit about what faith is and how it changes our lives. Assent of the mind. She does this in her story. She says to them, I know. There is an element of truth. Some new truth has been made aware to her, and she says, I know that the Lord has given you this land and that a great fear of you has fallen on us, so that all who live in this country are melting with fear because of you. We have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea for you when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to Sihon and Og, to the 2 kings of the Amorites east of the Jordan, whom you completely destroyed. This is information that she now knows. Her mind has assented. She has agreed with this. That is something which I say is true. Tim, my friend, preached a sermon on the Good Samaritan. So he knew something too, didn't he? He knew the truth about what you are supposed to do in this situation. His mind had assented to something. There are knowing Christians. Remember, I said knowing, feeling, and willing. I think there are knowing Christians and feeling Christians. And that doesn't mean that knowing Christians don't feel anything, and it doesn't mean that feeling Christians don't know anything. It means that when we became interested in Christianity, that probably was what caught our interest. And when we really get excited about something, it's probably in that area. So I am a knowing Christian. I became interested in Christianity by the academics of it, the intellect of it. If you think you're a knowing Christian, raise your hand. Yeah, that means you probably at some point said, prove it to me. It also probably means that you're not that excited about songs like Oh Happy Day. Knowing Christians during Oh Happy Day, we sing, well, what this song is it's an expression of our joy that comes from salvation. And I can see by the way people are behaving, they're all feeling this joy. This is what we do. And now I have expressed how salvation causes me to feel joy. So I've fulfilled my duties for this song. Not to say we don't like feeling and sharing emotion. It's just not the first go-to. It's not the way we have kind of oriented ourselves within the Christian faith. We kind of first go to the brains of it all. Tell me how it works. It doesn't actually matter that much whether I feel anything about it. What it matters is, do I understand it? And out of my understanding, then I'll begin to organize my life. I'll describe that as my faith. Faith does require some intellectual assent. James says that in James 2:19. You believe that there is one God. Good. I think sometimes in the church we are expecting people to have too much intellectual assent, too much agreement. We don't invite them in and engage in conversation at a deep level unless we secure some of these pillars of our faith. Unless I hear you confess that Jesus Christ is the Son of God, what if we said just them showing up was an expression of their faith? What they have said is, I assent with my mind that this has something to offer me. That's a truth. That's where they are. I think we need to begin inviting people in and really discovering for them what is the academic faith for them. And have they arrived at a place and celebrate them right there in that moment. But intellectual assent is not enough. Faith must continue. James says, even the demons believe that, and they shudder. James 2:19, part B, which I conveniently didn't read to you after I read part A. There is an assent of the mind, then there is a trust of the heart, a feeling. Jade, are you a thinker or a feeler? My wife is a feeler. Sometimes even I'll listen to a sermon or a song and I'll lean over and whisper, how do I feel about this? I need her. Knowing Christians need feeling Christians. We need to be communicating across that gap. It's not always a big gap. There are some of us who I think are a little more balanced, but for those of you who know, I am really an emotional kind of Christian. I really get into the art of it and the drama of it and the feeling of it. When a song swells up, I feel like my faith is just soaring. If you're far on that end, you need to make some really solid, knowing Christian friends and help to balance each other, learn from each other. If you're a very knowing Christian and you're easily stimulated by academic thought and theological books and dictionaries, you need to meet and bring close to you some feeling friends and ask them how they feel about that, because that probably is how you should feel about that too. In Joshua, it tells us that she did not just know something, but she felt something. When we heard of it, our hearts melted in fear. Now here's the key thing. For the Lord your God is God in heaven above and on earth below. In this part of faith, this is where our heart and soul, the guts of us, really attaches to the truth. Both of these need to be there. There needs to be an understanding of the truth, and there needs to be a soul attachment to the truth. There are lots and lots of people who understand the theology of Christianity better than a lot of us in this room, but have no soul attachment to it. It's purely academic. We need to not only be people who know and understand, but we need to have a heart and soul guts attachment to it. With our minds, we know with our minds, but we believe with our hearts. Tim trusted the truth with his heart. He studied the Good Samaritan and he understood the academic truth of it. And when he came to this man on the road and saw him in the ditch, the truth was fastened in his heart, and now he's put into a very hard spot. What will I do? We don't reach a what will I do moment unless there's truth attached to soul. When they're attached, we're convicted. What will I do? The decision of the will. Assent and trust precede and explain Ahab's risk for the spies. I think that there were probably a lot of people in Jericho who knew everything that Rahab knew and did nothing. She even says it right there. All who live in this country are melting in fear. She's not the only one that knows. She's the only one that did anything. Some of us, I think we think that our trust of the heart is our decision of the will. I learned about Christianity and I trusted it with my heart. And so I've done something. The agreement of the soul with the truth is only what's stirring up in here. And if that's the only thing that ever happens, nobody sees anything. The decision of the will is the only visible element of Christianity. That's what we're seeing today. I cannot see if you I can't see if you agree with anything, and I cannot see if your soul is attached to anything. I can only see if you're doing anything. And we figured that out, I think, because some of us, and definitely me at points in my life, realize that if I just show you something, then I don't need to know the truth or have my soul attached to it. All you can see is my action. James 2:14, what good is it if someone claims to have faith but has no deeds? So Tim reaches a point of decision. Rahab reaches a point of decision, and they are caught. I know something. I've attached my soul to what I know, and I feel conviction. I am now caught in a moment of decision. What will I do about what I know? We are caught with them. Faith is life inside a wall. You see, Rahab lived in the wall. Jericho is surrounded by a giant wall. In fact, it's so big, people could live inside of it. Rahab had a door to Jericho and a window to the fields. And in that wall, she had decisions to make. Tim was in a wall. Faith is life in the wall, the furthest out while still being in. God had placed her in Jericho, but she's as far out of Jericho as she can be while still being in. She's caught in the wall. What is she going to do? She can't just leave the wall. She can't just sit there. We all know what happened to the wall. James 2:17, faith by itself, if not accompanied by action, is dead. So for those of you who feel like maybe the preacher is speaking strongly tonight, I'm barely adding to Scripture. All faith acts or dies. The banner is tenacity. This is not legalism. When we talk about the activity of our faith, this is not legalism, this is a natural expression of faith. I know something, I fasten my soul to it, so then what am I going to do about that? I know that your faith will bring risk. I know that your faith will bring challenge into your life. I know that your faith will put you in places you haven't been before. I know that your faith will take you out of the places where you feel comfortable. I know this because I know Jesus. All faith finds Jericho. Jesus is constantly looking for the Jerichos in our culture and in our society and in the places around us, and he's trying to place us there. He's trying to get you as close to Jericho as he can, the furthest out while still being in a place of active obedience where your faith must do something. And this is the experience of the Christian life. It is most fully lived out within the walls of Jericho. There are times for sermons on peace and joy and satisfaction and fullness and rest. I'm not a preacher who refuses to preach those things, but tonight I'm preaching on tenacity. The Christian life is most fully lived out, most fully experienced within the walls of Jericho. Within the place where our Lord can call you to something. And where we say with abandon, yes, I will do that. There is a soldier language that must be a part of our community. So that no matter what someone else is doing, we cheer them on. We stand next to them. We believe in them. Risk second. Challenge second. Discomfort second. We are moving. We are in a wall. Look at how we sing of God's faithfulness. Pardon for sin and a peace that endureth, thine own dear presence to cheer and to guide. This is a list of ways that God is faithful to us. In what way are they active? Pardon for sin, a peace that endures, his presence, his hope. If God is not tenacious towards me, I have no salvation. His faithfulness must have tenacity, or I die. And what do we do when we speak of the faithfulness of man? Let's go back to Hebrews 11. In Hebrews 11, we have this list. By faith, by faith, by faith, by faith. Here's what they did. These people up here at the top, where you're seeing these names where there's descriptions of their stories. Hebrews 11, by faith, verbs, built, obeyed and went, made, sacrificed, blessed, gave, suffered, persevered, kept, passed through, marched, welcomed. Who are we, church? This is our bloodline. How does it continue? And what more shall I say? I don't have time to tell about Gideon, Barak, Samson, and Jephthah, about David and Samuel and the prophets who through faith conquered kingdoms, administered justice, and gained what was promised, who shut the mouths of lions, quenched the fury of the flames, and escaped the edge of the sword, whose weakness was turned into strength, who became powerful in battle and routed foreign armies. Women received back their dead, raised to life again. There were others who were tortured, refusing to be released so that they might again gain an even better resurrection. Some faced jeers and flogging and even chains and imprisonment. They were put to death by stoning. They were sawed in two. They were killed by the sword. They went about in sheepskins and goatskins, destitute, persecuted, and mistreated. The world was not worthy of them. They wandered in deserts and mountains, living in caves and in holes in the ground. That's where we come from. These are my people. That is my tradition. When I believe something in my mind and I fasten my soul to it, I am in a wall and I must move, and I come from this kind of tradition. What is faith but active? And I know there are some who are maybe saying, yeah, but what about waiting? Can't I be faithful in waiting? I want to tell you, yes, but not with excitement. This tenacity in faith says, I'll wait if I must, but I'm anxious to get on the fighting field because we're doing something. If I have to wait, that's fine, but I've got my sword in hand, I'm ready. What do you want me to do? That's waiting faith. This is not waiting faith. This is just waiting. Is your faith tenacious? Testify to us by your activity. I want to see it in you. I want to see what God has shown you. I want to see how you've interacted with it. And the only way that I get to see that is by what you're doing. Testify to who He is and what He's done by what you're doing with the minutes that you've been given. I don't care if you're at risk. I hope that we have some sad stories of people who have been hurt and injured because they put themselves in the line of fire. I'm not talking chaos and poor decision making that's unnecessary. I'm saying we need to be leaning into the dangerous places. I'm so thankful for what she said last night. I am so thankful for that because we need to begin changing our dialogue in that direction. There are so many voices and ideas and opinions in this world to protect and batten down the hatches and close the doors and lock them up and pull the windows down because everything's breaking loose and oh no, nobody's in the streets. The Christians have open reign. Let's get out there and go to the places where nobody wants to go. There are people groups who are the untouchable today. We cannot call them untouchable inside of the gospel. We can't come together on Sunday morning and praise God for His faithfulness and for how He goes after the lost one and then say, but there are a couple streets I would watch yourself. If anyone wants to go down that street, we need to cheer them on. Yes, what time are you going? Because I want to pray when you're going down the street that nobody else wants to go down. We've got to change our dialogue. So my friend Tim comes along the road. And he sees this man, and his leg's bent. And Tim's not a doctor. There's nothing around. And he said he took a piece of cardboard and some grass, and he wrapped it around to try and stop the bleeding because he could tell that this guy was not doing well. For 15 minutes, he's hollering for, he can't leave the guy. He's hollering for a car, people are just driving right by. I told you it's complicated. Nobody wants to get involved in this situation. He's begging for people, stop, 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 stop. Finally, somebody comes up and they've got room and they pick him up and they put him in the car and they drive off. I don't know what happened to him. Tim doesn't know either. Rahab puts her life on the line. She puts her family on the line. She commits treason against her country. All we know of Rahab later is that she had a son. We don't know that she ever found out the rest of the story. But in fact, what we do know, these were all commended for their faith, yet none of them received what had been promised, since God had planned something better for us, so that only together with us would they be made perfect. Rahab did not do this for herself. She didn't even know how the story ended. Faith learns of something that's so compelling that it has to attach its soul to it. And then once that happens, you're in a wall. And you have to do something in that wall, and Rahab did. What we know of her story is that she gave birth to a little boy and named him Boaz. And we know that Boaz married a woman named Ruth. And that because of that, Rahab entered the family line of our Lord Jesus Christ. What is your faith doing? It doesn't need to know the end. You don't need to know how you got here. You know something. Your soul has attached to it. You're in the wall. I have friends who put me in a wall. That my dialogue with them creates a narrative. My wife does the same thing. My language and my dialogue with my wife in private is faith language. I have to act because I know that my wife is contributing to my life in such a way, and my children. This is the way we speak as a family. They know because I've taught them. This is what I believe. And this is what I've attached my soul to. And so because they know, they begin contributing into my life in a way that makes me act. They're not letting me out on Dad, aren't you scared? Dad, aren't you worried about that? They might ask that, but when it comes right down to it, they say, well, you need to do what you need to do what God is asking you to do. There are pastors in my life. Pastors in my life that over the years, as I have been in hard places, as I've been lost, as I've been confused, as I've had that little bit of truth that may not seem much to some of you, but it's all I had at the time. And I went to them and said, I think that I agree to this much. And through conversations with people like Pastor Tony and Pastor John and Pastor Bob, I was able to figure out how I could respond to that. And their role in my life put me in a wall. They didn't let me out. It was a church conversation. I have a mentor, Paul Garverick. And in my conversations with Paul, the things that I said to him, he made me deal with those things. What are you going to do about that? This isn't just for fun, Nathan. There are elders in my life. I want to say something about elders. There are too many valuable elders who are ashamed of being their age. And we need you. The church needs you. Stop saying sorry and start giving us wisdom. Young people, we need to listen. Do you know how much I have grown in my life? Because I have surrounded myself with people who are twice my age and have already done what I'm trying to do. You hear that language? This is the language that needs to be happening in our churches, so that as young people are starting to come in with just something small, I just believe this much. What do I do with this? You see, there's things happening. This is Dave Wortley. Dave Wortley is a real estate agent and an elder in my church that when I was dedicated as a baby at Brookhaven, Dave Wortley was already attending, and when family was called into ministry, we had to sell a home, and Dave Wortley sold it. He was in my home when we were there, weeping and crying because we were going through the trauma of separation. Dave did not say, well, are you sure you're doing the right thing? Nathan, do you know what he said? His influence in my life was this: if you believe this, and you've connected your soul to it, you've trusted with your heart, then you must. And when we sold the home, he came over and he wrote, "Praise the Lord" on the sold sign. That's the elder leadership that I've had in my life that has built my faith. Are you in a wall? Are you in a place where you believed something and you connected your soul to it, and you know that God's been telling you it's time to act? He sent the spies of His Holy Spirit to whisper into your life and say, now's the time, we're ready, we're outside, we're ready to storm the gates, we just need you to bring down the wall. And you've been too afraid. You've been too scared. You thought, I'm not qualified. This is too big. I'm just one person in a giant wall. Faith doesn't ask you how big you are. Maybe you're in a place where your faith is growing. You're learning more and more, and your soul is really attaching to this truth. I believe that we need to begin saying, God, put me in a wall. That's soldier talk. Put me in the wall, God, because I want to help. I want to help build your kingdom. I want to do something for you, my God. I have learned about you. I've seen you, and I've connected to you with my heart, and I can't help but doing something for you. Call me into your work. Let me serve you. Let me do something. Put me at risk. Challenge me. Make me do something that's outside of what I ever thought I would do. As long as I can serve you, because I love you so much. We're going to sing, and I want to ask that if you are in one of those two places, if you've been in a wall too long, if you've been in a wall too long and God's been saying, I want you to do this, and you've just been too scared, you've been too intimidated, you're not sure, I promise you're not the only one. Stop it tonight. This is the dialogue that we have. We want to encourage you. Do you notice that none of the building of my faith was built on these shoulders? I am a part of a community. God has blessed me richly by people in every corner who keep speaking into my life. We want to be that community for you. If God has called you into something and you're right here in this wall, and you know it's time, I want you to come forward. Second group, if you've reached a place and it's been a while since you've asked God to put you in a wall, I know that's a scary one. That's a scary one, but I've asked that one. I remember sitting on the floor of my bedroom with my wife, and it was completely empty. And we wept like we have never wept in our lives, because we had cried out to God and said, put us in a wall for you. We loved him so much and we just wanted to do something. And so we said, put us in a wall, and he did. And that really hurt. But I am here to testify that the location of that pain is the greatest explosion of faith I've ever experienced in my life. I didn't do it alone. I didn't do it alone. But my wife and I really hurt. I want some of you to feel that tonight. God is calling people to come in to the wall and do something. You know it, and you've attached your will. Let's be active in our faith. We're going to sing, and you have an opportunity to come forward. Please do, and please make sure nobody is alone. This is a community event.